Never to get home.
Okay, good. Well, I never know what God's going to do with those things. So some days I feel like I hit it out of the park and nobody says a word, and I'm like, oh. And then other days I think, oh, that was kind of a dud, and people are like, oh, that was great. I'm like, okay, you never know, right?
Whenever you talk about relationships, I have to think of Phil.
Oh,
I mean, you were born that way.
okay, yeah, relationships matter, don't they?
Drove us all crazy.
Yeah,
They got things done.
yeah. Relationships matter. They really
I
do.
talked with a friend this weekend. She said, I think I'm going to live forever. She's about my age. And she said, my devotion said this morning, if you have lots of friends, then you live longer. And she said, just keep making friends.
Oh, that's awesome. There's something to that. There really is. You have a reason to get up, right? I mean, sometimes people start to just kind of veg and they don't have a reason to get up, and therefore if you don't move, that's the beginning of the end, right? You got to keep moving, and so your body's designed to move. But yeah, and God has designed us for relationships, right? It was not good that Adam should be alone, so she created Eve. This is where we ended up last time, and it was the end of the whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and my mother. It was that whole section that I preached on a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to turn the corner today, and we're going to go into a parable. But before we get there, it says this. Again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. So this is the Sea of Galilee. It's up north in Israel, and eventually Jesus is going to head down to Jerusalem, but he's still up in the Sea of Galilee area right now. The crowd that gathered around him was so large, so he had a large crowd, that he got into a boat and sat in it out of the lake, while the people were along the shore of the water's edge. So this is the second time already in Mark's gospel that he has gone out into a boat so that he would have a platform from which he could speak. That maybe seems a little bit weird to us, but it's really, think about it for a second. You know, if I've just got done reading a Teddy Roosevelt novel, not a novel, but a biography. And Teddy Roosevelt would take the transportation, the trains, and he would stop in every town, and he would stand on the caboose, and he would give a speech, right? Because you were a little bit elevated, and then you could get going again, turning on to the next place. And he had this habit, and it's common throughout history, that people would get on things like that. So you could get out from the people a little bit, and your voice would project, especially on the water. Your voice kind of echoes off the water, and people could hear you better. And so he went out there, and the people were along the shore's edge, and he taught them many things, and he did it especially by parables. I think we talked about this maybe last week, or maybe it was just in my mind, but there are over 30 parables, 30 unique parables recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John doesn't really have parables. John is a whole different kind of structure and teaching. But in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there are 30 different parables, and the parable that he's about to speak here appears in all of them, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And so that's not the case with many of the parables. Many of them are unique to a specific gospel. But the ones that are in all three, oftentimes are ones that commentators would say Jesus probably taught this more than once. It was probably in his repertoire of teachings that really connected and people started to get it. And this one is about, in his teaching, he said, listen, this means pay close attention. A farmer went out to sow his seed. I was thinking about this last week. I have a cousin, and she is married to a guy who's traveled the whole world with John Deere. He would introduce new technologies to emerging countries. So he spent many years traveling to places like Brazil, South Africa, the Ukraine, places like that. And he would take the technology that we have started to take for granted, and he would introduce for example, the GPS on a tractor. Did you know that these days tractors are self-driving?
Yep.
They plug in the coordinates of where the ends, the boundaries of the field are, and then the tractor will figure out the most economical and the best route for planting everything and harvesting everything. And it's very interesting. There's so much technology in these tractors now. And it's not just the tractors, it's actually the implements themselves. So for example, he was telling me this some years ago when we went to a family reunion, that in the planting of let's say you're planting a cornfield, right? And in the planting of the seed, the planting device, it actually bores a hole to a very specific depth, and then it will measure the soil, and it'll take a soil sample while it's there and automatically put the right amount of fertilizer in that hole. It's amazing the technology that is in farm equipment these days. And it's so expensive. But that's why these farmers have to have these vast sums of tens of thousands of acres so they can pay off their $1 million tractors and their $100,000 planters, right? It's crazy. There's a very different world. And Jesus is talking to farmers, and really the only way they farmed was they threw stuff out randomly. You know, and if it took, it took, and if it didn't, it didn't. But if Jesus were talking to farmers today, he would be talking about GPS and fertilizers that are automatically drilled down and poured into a hole, and it's sample soil, blah, 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 on and on. And the technology today is so different. But I think that a farmer today can still relate to this story, right? So listen, he says, pay attention. There was a farmer, and he went out to sow his seed. And as he was scattering the field, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. So he's going to tell 4 different scenarios, right? He's going to tell, and you guys know this, but maybe we can glean some new things out of it today. So the very first one is he threw it, and some of it went along the path. You know, there's walking paths and cattle paths and all that kind of stuff. And the stuff that lands on the path, not much chance, right? The birds are going to get it. It's too hard. It can't soak in. It can't get germinated. It's never going to yield anything. It's going to get scavenged, and that's what's going to happen. So the birds came and ate it up. And some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. So it did actually spring up. It sprung up quickly. When it would rain, the rocky places, the little water would form in the pockets around the rocks and stuff, and it would spring up, but it couldn't get its roots down because there was just a little sample of soil on the top, and it couldn't penetrate through the rocks. And so the soil was shallow, and when the sun came, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no roots. So this makes sense, right? So far, this is good. So it crops up for a little bit, but then it goes away. The other soil fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so that they did not bear grain. Still other seed fell on the good. Let's stop here just for a second. The thorns. There were a lot of different kinds of weeds in Palestine in that day, and some of them would grow up to be 6 feet tall. So they would just choke out. Even though these had, when they say thorns here, it doesn't necessarily mean it had a pokey part. It might have, like a thistle or something like that. I always feel like I'm lisping when I say the word thistle. Or Thessalonians. But yeah, it fell among the thorns, or the weeds is really kind of maybe another translation there. And it choked out the plants, and they did not bear grain because the thorns kind of overpowered them. The weeds shadowed them, kept them in the shadows, so they didn't get enough sunlight. But still others fell on good soil, and it came up, and it grew, and it produced a crop, some multiplying 30, 60, and 100 times. So this is kind of an amazing thing. When grain does this, it's a miracle. we can't, I mean, we can now, biologists can explain exactly how this happens and whatnot, but as lay people, we just throw a seed down and it bears fruit and we're like, wow, that's really miraculous. That God provided the sunshine, God provided the soil, God provided the fertilization, the rain, et cetera, and it just produces, and it's a cool thing. Then Jesus said, whoever has ears, let them hear. So some people aren't getting this. They're not understanding this. And this is always a little bit troubling to me. There's a couple sections of this that I struggle with. Now, when he was alone, the 12 and others around him asked him about the parables. And he told them this: the secret of the kingdom has been given to you, but to those on the outside, everything is said in parables, so that they may be ever seeing but never perceiving, and ever hearing but never understanding. Otherwise, they might turn and be forgiven. Doesn't it almost sound as if Jesus is like, I don't want them to get it? We know that's not true, right? It's God's will that all men would be saved. Who is he speaking to here, do you think? There's some people there that we know that are plotting against him. There's the Pharisees and the religious leaders, and that's kind of what he is speaking to. Would he want them to be saved? Yes, but he knows their hearts. He knows their hearts are hard, and he knows their hearts are evil, and he knows that they are beyond repair, in essence. And so that's kind of how we can kind of frame this so that it makes sense. Because you always have to take theological things and not just think of exactly just in that passage. You want to think of the bigger picture. What else do we know about God's heart? Well, we know that God's heart is that all men would be saved and that none would be condemned. So why would Jesus say something like this? That he doesn't want them to perceive, that he doesn't want their ears to be open, their ears to hear and their eyes to see. But it's because he knows their hearts are wrong. Their hearts are evil. Could they even turn, even in that? Perhaps, but Jesus knows the truth. And so he speaks to them in parables. And parables are, they take some interpretation. Some of them are pretty straightforward, and others take a little bit more like nuancing. And like the one today, the parable that we talked about in church in Luke 16, has some difficult things in it, right? That's a hard passage. It doesn't quite make sense to us off the top. And so not every parable is plain to understand, especially when we don't have the cultural context. Like we wish that Luke, in the passage that we looked at this morning, that Luke would have given us a little bit more of the social cues. Like why would he commend a dishonest person? Well, the only way that could make any sense is if there was dishonesties previous to this conniving that was going on and stuff. And so anyway, we'll keep going. And then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable? He's basically saying, this is the simplest of parables, my friends. You guys are kind of dense if you don't get this one. The farmer sows the word. And so the seed is the word, right? The seed is the word. Some people are like the seed along the path where the word is sown. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes it away. They're like the ones that were snatched up by the bird on the hard path. Yep, that's the noise. And so Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. This is where I was going to jump in with some comparative theological. There's a big fancy I'll bring this up next week because I didn't get it prepared today, but it's called soteriology, and it's the study of how people are saved. And different churches have different angles on this, right? So a Calvinist has this whole double predestination thing. We'll talk a little bit about that.
We don't need to.
Yeah, we do. We do. I think people need to understand. I need to explain it because it makes me feel smart. Anyway. But I'm not going to do it today. But I'll do it quickly, and it won't be that boring and painful, I promise. Okay, I don't promise. It might be boring and painful. So the reason I'm saying that is because some people, their theologies get bent or they get skewed by taking a passage or a couple of passages and spinning them out a certain way. And so Jesus is basically saying here, how does the word get into people? How does it happen? And this is a kind of a jump off point for soteriology, the doctrine of salvation, etc. So Jesus is saying, just because the word is preached and people hear it, doesn't mean that it's going to take root. Sometimes Satan comes and just snatches it away. And a lot of people, that's the way it works, right? Anybody know somebody like that? Sure, we all do, right? Okay. Others, like seed sown in rocky places, hear the word at once and receive it with joy. Woohoo! They are overjoyed by the gospel. And that shapes who they are. But since they have no root, it lasts for only a short time. When trouble or persecution come because of the word, that's an interesting thing, right? It's not a if persecution comes or if trouble comes. It's a when. In this world you will have much trouble. Yeah. It's not an if, but a when. When trouble comes, you will have trouble in this world. Because of the word, they quickly fall away. And so the word brings challenges into our life. Let's talk about that for a second. What kind of challenges does the word of God bring into our lives, and how does that get lived out in everyday experience?
I remember years ago, before we had children, and Joe and I would go out with friends and whatnot. And it would be a Saturday evening.
Yeah.
And we'd say, well, we have church in the morning. We can't stay out till 2 a.m. or whatever. And,
Right.
People were like, what? You go to church? And so that, there's a challenge in that.
Yeah. No, that's right. People don't grasp that. Our son moved into these apartments next door, and he was telling one of his coworkers that he moved in close to his dad's church, and they said, "Oh man, that must mean you have to go to church now." And he looked at me and said, "No, I like going to church." And they were like, "What? That's weird,"
Illness.
Yeah, illness.
Awesome job.
Illness comes. Yeah, people are. Especially people who've been fed the prosperity gospel, right? If you are a real believer, you will always have your health and you will always be wealthy and blah 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 blah. It's just crazy talk.
Or you didn't pray hard enough.
You didn't pray hard enough. It's on you.
Or you have an unresolved sin.
You have unresolved sin that's always on you, and you're never throwing yourself at the mercy of God. You're always trying to do things to appease God, and you're working hard, and it's a works righteousness, even though it's a cheap grace. So what I mean by that is, Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote this book. I can't even think of the name of it right now, but in there, the concept is cheap grace. And basically he's saying that if you accept grace, you accept the cross that comes with it. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. And that's part and parcel to accepting the gift of faith by grace, is that you will have trouble, you will have persecutions, you will have hardships, and that's part of walking under the cross. In this world, you will have troubles. But what people want to hear is that when you become a believer, all your troubles are going to go away. And when that doesn't happen, then that's what happens to these people who for a short time had faith, but then troubles come and they run away. So, yeah, Kristen.
I think it kind of speaks to like the problem of emotions, of just letting emotions take the place of true spirituality or whatever. You can have this great
experience.
Yeah. And then when that's not there, the emotions for whatever reasons aren't there anymore than you.
Yeah, you have to always have a new emotional high, or God must not be present. That's what we talked about, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago. We talked about the sacraments of emotions, right? the sacred, when you know that God is present when you're having some emotional experience, but if you aren't having it, you don't believe that God is really there. Well, that's not how real Christianity works. There's nothing wrong with emotions, but when you base your faith on emotions, and God would, I believe this, that God gives you emotional experiences in the context of faith, and those can be huge blessings, you know. But that's not what we're there for. We're not just there to try and get the high of the emotion. We're there for God to teach us. And sometimes he teaches us best through things like trouble and persecution. We learn the most when we're under the gun. And so, yeah.
How do you learn? You have to struggle.
Gotta struggle. It's the butterfly thing, right? The butterfly can never escape the chrysalis until it has to spread its wings and push against the chrysalis until it finally emerges from the cocoon that it was in. And that is hard work. And actually, if you cut the chrysalis open, the butterfly will never be able to fly because it didn't strengthen its wings enough. So the lesson of the butterfly, right? That trouble and persecution, difficulties actually help us to become who God would make us be. So, yeah, Bart.
Well, some people are persecuted because of their faith. They lose their jobs. I can't remember there were nuns in New York. I don't know if you saw that, but they would. Let's see. I can't remember. I've got this mixed up. Either because there are so many of them and they're different things, but it's all because of their faith. But they wouldn't say that let's see. I've got this mixed up. But one of them was that they wouldn't go along with abortion.
Okay.
And another one was that I heard this week was, that they would not go along with saying that sometimes, and I think that might have been the nuns, that sometimes, suicide was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes just
Taking a stand.
Yeah.
Taking a stand alienates you from the culture, and therefore you become kind of a lightning rod for all of the vitriol of the culture. They pour it out on you and mock you. Oh, you're so small-minded. How can you not believe that mercy killing is what they would call it, as opposed to suicide or, taking murder? That's a good thing. In many states, I don't know how many now, a dozen. I think it's legal for mercy killing. They call it. They don't call it assisted suicide. They call it mercy killing. And I say it's God's call. When we go home, it's God's call. We don't get to choose. God chooses to call us home in his time. Now, do I love the fact that some people linger in suffering for a long time? No. That's sad. That's where the church has a role to come around alongside people and pray and encourage and be with them. And I don't believe either in extraordinarily sustaining life. I have a DNR. I don't want to be on a ventilator for 6 years if I have some condition that causes me to not be able to breathe and have a heartbeat on my own. I don't want to be kept alive like that. I want to go meet Jesus. So there's, but having a DNR is not the same thing as saying, I want to die, right? Those are different.
It's a slippery slope we're going down very fast, because it's not just people who are terminally ill, most of it. It's anybody who's a burden or somebody who's a young, healthy person who's depressed.
Yes,
Instead of treating them.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, it is. You're exactly right.
In Canada, they've legalized it all. And if a teenager says, I'm really depressed right now, I think I want to die. Okay, mine. You're good. Good to go.
Yeah.
But you can give some medication that gives them the desire.
Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in. I had an experience this week here at the church where one of our workers that was working on our Narthex project over there got into it, and he was walking off the job, and I could see he was very upset. So I went out and talked to him in the parking lot and said, I'm about ready to kill myself. And he said, that man cannot talk to me that way. And we talked. I said, you want to come in the office and talk a little bit? No. And after about half an hour, he kind of calmed down, and we got to a place where I think he's still alive. I think he's mad at his boss, but that's better than the alternative, right? And you never know where you're going to run into people who are in that kind of place. We had in the grief share session that we had this last spring, we had a guy come to just one of the sessions, but afterwards I talked to him for quite a while, and he was very stressed and very openly considering suicide. And everybody's got something, right? But not everybody has something of that depth. And I'm not quite sure, trouble and persecution are one thing. Depression to where you want to take your life is kind of a different level.
Spiritual attack.
Yeah, that is a spiritual attack. That Satan is saying you're not worth anything. You would be better off dead. Your life has no value, whereas God is saying your life has value. Your life matters. I've placed you here on earth for a reason. I've given you things to steward and things and people to care for, and it's a different vibe altogether. Satan's telling you you're a loser, you're not enough, blah 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 blah. And so this is, back here. Jesus said it's Satan who comes and takes away the word of hope. It's not just random stuff. It's Satan. Satan is real and he's alive, and he takes away the word that was sown. He takes away the hope of the gospel. And that happens. And that's why I wanted to bring in this concept of soteriology. We will get there next week.
Zach Williams, he's a Christian singer. He's got a song called Fear is a Liar. And to me, I always put in Satan is a liar.
Satan is,
You could
yeah. That's where he wants.
Yeah.
Satan is the deceiver. He wants to turn every hope into a depression. He wants to turn every light into darkness. He wants to turn every good thing into a bad thing. And that's the way he is, because he's a liar. So, yeah, Mark.
Well, sometimes I wonder, like when you read the Bible, there's all kinds of stuff about demons and possession and everything,
Sure.
and all that activity. And sometimes I wonder if, I think we recognize it sometimes in other countries and we don't see it in our own.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I mean, it's just something I've thought about.
Well, I think demons are real. And I think, what do I want to say here? I think in the U.S. we tend to minimize spiritual realities. At the same time, there is real mental illness. And I don't think the two always equate. And I think a lot of times, especially in the more Pentecostal or the more emotional forms of Christianity, it's always viewed as a demon possession. And I think there's probably two different distinct things, is my take. Now, wherever there's mental illness, this is Doug talking, not the Bible. Wherever there is mental illness, I think there is spiritual oppression. But that's different than possession. So oppression means the devil is
Sitting on your shoulder.
sitting on your
chirping in
shoulder
ear.
and chirp. Yeah, it's like the little, cartoons where there's an angel on one side and a devil on the other. And if you have a mental health condition, I think Satan's there chirping, right? But it's different than a possession. And so I don't know what the best way to move forward with all that is. Do pray with people and say, Lord, if there are demons that this person is experiencing, would you please free them from that? And also, Lord, may the hope of the gospel be what anchors this whole thing, because that's what ultimately is going to drive out all fear, all the demons, all the bad stuff. So yeah,
Perfect love casts off.
cast out all fear. Yeah.
Well, my mother, when she was 5, her mother was, ended up being diagnosed with schizophrenia. But she tried to kill my mother when my mother was 5.
Oh my goodness.
And glad that didn't happen, but anyway, from then on, she was committed and she died in an institution. But she said that she heard voices telling her to do that. So,
Could be. I mean, could
you
have
know,
been,
it's
could have been
just,
demons.
it makes
No
me
doubt.
wonder sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think demons are real. You know,
Think about your own thought consciousness, like you're faced with a situation and you've got a couple voices in your head. Which one do you listen to? I think one is following the spirit and one is leading down a path of destruction. So you've got to be discerning no matter who you are.
yeah. And the devil will get a foothold. There's no doubt about it. And, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the, back in Exodus where Moses goes with all of the 10 plagues, right? And at the start, it says that Pharaoh hardened his heart. But in the end, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God gives us over at times to our own desires. And sometimes I think that's what happens in cases of mental health. It starts as the person having this evil desire, this power trip, or whatever it is. But eventually God will give us over to those things if we have renounced him, which is really what Pharaoh did. Pharaoh thought he was God. He didn't have to listen to the Hebrew God. I'm God. I am the sun God. I am Ra, the sun God. I am the master of all the universe, blah, 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 blah. And so he wasn't about to bow down to the Hebrew God. He had to prove who he was. And so his spirit got harder and harder towards the real God. And I think that can happen to people. Satan tricks us, and he says that this is how you're going to be happy. When you get more of this, then that's where real happiness is. And people chase this whole trail and they end up absolutely miserable. I remember I had a sociology professor at Concordia Seward, and he said, "Do you remember the first time you had a cheeseburger from McDonald's? It was glorious." And he said, "Every time you eat one, it's a little less good. And you have to have more and more of that thing to meet the same level of satisfaction." And so we've jumbo-sized it, but it really isn't any better. It's just that you get more of it. And we're killing ourselves with getting more of what we think we need.
And cholesterol.
Yeah, cholesterol, yeah. But his point was more about kind of a theological point, was that we chase after things. And when we get the things, then we need more of that thing to act. Let's say it's money. Your God is money. And you get to this level and you set this goal, and then you think, I've met this goal. Now I can be happy. Well, what happens? You change the goal. The goal moves to the next thing. And we're never satisfied with the things of this earth.
So we buy a new truck.
I told Karen, I told my kids I'm having my midlife crisis, and they said, "Dad, you're well past midlife." Okay, I'm having my 3/4 life crisis. I went out and bought a truck that had 4-wheel drive because I've never had one and I always wanted one. Is it going to make me happy?
For a minute.
For a minute.
Well, when you
Yeah.
go hunting, it'll be good up in the mountains.
There you go. See, I've justified it too, Barb. It is not hard to come up with reasons why.
He did apologize for buying.
I did. I bought a truck like Alan's, and I had some months ago said to Alan, "Man, that must be fun having that little toy truck you have." And I downsized, and I got the same truck Alan has. So it's.
Oh, well,
But-
the ribbon started.
Oh yeah. There is no, and I deserve it, so that's good. That's give and take. That's what friends do, and we will welcome each other into heaven.
God didn't say we couldn't have a little fun.
Oh yeah, and I'm okay with it. But if that's my thing, if I have to always have, then that's the problem,
No,
right?
this is the last one you're buying.
Ever. Oh, I know. Well, maybe. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe.
I
You
said
never
I'd
know.
never buy another car, but I'm really wanting one now.
Okay. Would you like 4-wheel drive pickup? So back to this. I'm not sure how, but back to this. when trouble and persecution come because of the word. So the word brings these challenges, and people who don't have roots, the word, the gospel flees. Not that the gospel flees. The gospel stays there, but the heart of the person doesn't allow the gospel to take root because there's a hard and callous heart. And so troubles and persecution, they reveal what's real, what's deep, right?
And who your friends are.
Your friends are. There's all kinds of stuff, good stuff that happens when those kinds of things happen. Still others see seeds grown amongst thorns, and they hear the word, but the worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. It's interesting. It doesn't say that the tree, that the plant dies here. It just says that it's sterile. It's unfruitful. It doesn't bear fruit. No fruit. Now, this is a little, I think these things are all in a way an indictment on the church. But this one particularly, it basically says you can be in the church, but be unfruitful. And I think that there's some truth to this. I mean, we've all known people who, the worries of life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, so that the passion for the life-sustaining word, it kind of evaporates. I still go to that place, I still show up, I still hear it, but the fruit of the gospel being born in my life is pretty negligent. There isn't a lot of either the fruit of the Spirit, where things like peace, or love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, all of those things. Are they growing in us? I meant to say this in the sermon this morning, but I didn't, because I made an apology instead at that point. But here's what I wanted to say. Are you really becoming more patient, or are you just getting better at covering up your impatience? And instead, inside, you're acting patient, but in the inside, you're going, ah! That kind of thing. Where real patience is like, okay, this is going to be fine. And covering up your impatience is just kind of like, okay, I'm tolerating this. Those are two different things, right? And so real fruitfulness is growing in love and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and self-control. Against these things, there is no law. Are you really becoming more loving, or are you just trying to act the part and know that you're supposed to forgive people, but in your heart you hold on to it? I think those are the things that, we can go to church all our lives and not really be transformed by the power of the gospel in an ongoing way. It's possible. I'm not saying anybody in this room, I'm just saying it's possible. Like it's possible in my life, that I found myself, and I haven't been very patient. I have been more obsessed over my own health things and my sister's stuff that I have to deal with, and stuff that's going on with building stuff. And I get all flustered, and then I'm not kind. I've been short with people, and I know that. And so, Lord, forgive me. Help me to be fruitful and not unfruitful. Any thoughts on that? Krista?
I was just thinking about something. I mean, C.S. Lewis said something about this, and I mean, I think what you just said is true, but I was also, if you're not there, it's okay to fake it till you make it.
I agree.
Lewis said something about, if you're worried about whether you love your neighbor or not, just act like you love him. And then eventually you'll find out that you actually do.
I think there's something to that sometimes our intentional it's way better to fake like you're loving them than it is to just be a jerk, right? Yeah. For the sake of the gospel. And what starts to happen is over time, you will love them because you've trained yourself by the power of the Spirit in you to say, that's not the way I'm supposed to be acting. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know that 10 years ago, I would have noticed that I was kind of being a jerk the last couple of weeks to people, because God was he's in the process of sanctifying me, right? And I'm a different person now than I was 10 years ago. So by grace, I hope that I continue to change and grow and bear a little fruit anyway. So yeah. Yeah, don't say a word, dear.
The benefit of marriage,
Wives have a.
rub off the rough
relative
So
edges.
she's got the front row seat. Yeah, there's no doubt.
I'm not throwing anything.
No, Barb, what you got?
That's why I just said we're all sinners, so we're never gonna live
No, we're never going to get all this stuff right, but
that.
God is moving us in a direction, right? And we are being changed from glory to glory, the scripture says. And so it's not that we'll ever arrive. We won't. But it's that I'm more and more aware of my sin. And that's actually a good thing. I don't like it, but it's a good thing.
Well,
So,
look at Paul's journey.
Yeah.
And how he became more and more aware of his unworthiness.
yeah, to where even in,
Chief of sinners.
yeah, and he says now, currently, it's present tense. I am chief of sinners now. And this was after his conversion and after his,
Beatings and
Yeah.
whippings and
All the-
shipwrecks.
talk about persecutions and troubles, right? I mean, Paul had quite the list.
Yes.
Way more than you and I have ever experienced. And what's God doing in that? He's revealing himself and helping Paul just to hold on to that which matters, which is the word. In this falling amongst the thorns things, you can still be in the church and around the word, but still be unfruitful or sterile or bearing no fruit. But others, like seeds sown in the good soil, they hear the word, they accept it, and they produce a crop 30, 60, and 100 times what was sown. And so this is ultimately, right, the hope. Now, I don't think this is like 4 equally divided 25 percentile quadrants, right? That a quarter of the seeds are here, and a quarter of the seeds are here, and a quarter of the seeds are here, and a quarter of the seeds are here. I really don't know how all of that works in the divine economy. I do see people that I've met, even just in the 8 years that I've been here, who are in each of these categories, right? You see some people who come in and they seem interested, but they're in and out in a very short time. And it's like the birds ate it. And then you see people who it's rocky soil, and if they get excited for a little bit, and then the next thing you know, you don't see them again, or they've turned in a different direction or whatever. And then you see some who are kind of amongst us, but you just don't know where the fruit is. And then you see those that are producing a ton of fruit. And I say those are the ones who are in Bible class every Sunday. So good for you guys. All right. But God knows the hearts, right? God knows the hearts of everyone. And so that's where this goes. And then he said to them, so he's kind of changing analogies here. He's changing, it's not a parable, but is a lamp brought in to be put under a basket or under a bed and not on a stand? For nothing is hidden except to be made manifest, nor is anything secret except to come to light. If anyone has ears, let him hear. What do you guys make of this little doodad, this saying that Jesus is bringing to us here? Is a lamp brought in to be put under a basket or a bed and not on a stand? That reminds
Jesus
me.
is the word. He is the light. So pay attention to him. Put him up on a stand so others can see him.
Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, that's what the light is all about, right? We are not to hide the light or to mask it or to put it under a bed. It's to be put up on a stand so that it can light up the whole room. And the interesting thing about light is even if there's just a little bit of light, there's light. It's a very different thing than total darkness. Total darkness is a scary place. It really is. If you guys have ever been down in a cave when they've turned off the lights,
Yeah.
you can't see anything at all. How would you like to live your whole life like that? I guess there are some amphibians that live like that have adapted to where they don't need eyesight and they just live down in the caves and stuff, but that's not for me. We have eyes so that we can see. Yeah, so if anyone has ears, let him hear. This is a very common phrase. Jesus says this. There was a thing in one of the commentaries that tallied up how many times he said, eyes, let him see, ears, let him hear. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's in the Gospels, it's recorded like 70 times that he says that phrase. It's a lot. It's an awful lot. It mostly has to do with kind of coming on the backside of parables. Just because they're not always plain and apparent what he's trying to say. But yeah.
I think he's also specifically talking to the leaders.
Yeah, in this situation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, he was dealing with a group of people, Pharisees and Sadducees and the scribes, who had, as you already know, it's like 613 things that people had to live by. And Jesus kept saying, you're putting so much weight on people.
Yeah.
They can't hear my message. They don't know God.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what's going on here. He's addressing that.
The what?
All those rules,
The
that would be
weeds.
the weeds.
Yeah, the weeds are rules. Yeah. Yeah, the law chokes out the gospel.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, the law can choke out the gospel. It can also lead us to the gospel if it humbles us to the point of realizing that we're not enough, which is kind of the goal of the law. But if you're anchoring on the law, it is the weeds.
Well, the trouble is that the Pharisees and Sadducees and their leadership had developed all of these things to keep the people in a certain mode.
Yeah.
And then Jesus says you're pushing people away.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Lana. That's very helpful. All right. Well, it is 11:44, and we can either. I think we'll stop here. We'll stop. This is my reminder, and I am super excited to next week bring you soteriology. So you don't have to come if you don't want. I won't spend tons of time on it, but I will bring a couple ideas because I think it's a pertinent conversation. I actually was triggered on this a little bit by a ecumenical kind of guy who writes about Christianity in general, and he's basically kind of saying Lutherans are a little bit weak on our soteriology. I think he might be a little bit right. Here's the question. Here's the question that he posed, and he said, if I go to any Baptist church in the country and somebody says, well, what do I have to do to be saved? Every person could explain. So you go to a Lutheran church and you ask, well, what do you have to do to be saved? And people are like, I don't know. How about be baptized and confess? But he says Lutherans don't really understand how to explain salvation to somebody who's from outside very well. And they just rely on the pastors. Probably true, but probably not good. So that's my goal, is to bring language that we can all use to say, if somebody came to you and said, wow, what do I have to do to be a part of this amazing gospel thing? What do I have to do to be saved? Well,
Talk to the pastor.
there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Go to class.
Go to a class. No, it's believe and be baptized and you shall be saved.
You can write and you will be saved.
Exactly. But a lot of Lutherans can't explain that in a very simple way. That's all there is to it. You're exactly right, Dolores. But a lot of people can't explain that because they think it's complicated. And they think it means I have to go to a 13-week class to learn theology from the 1500s. You know, I'm not saying it's not applicable today. I'm just saying
Or
it's.
you can read the Bible that's 2,000 years old.
That's truth. Like
I mean,
3,500, 4,000.
No,
Yeah,
New
yeah.
Testament.
Yeah. All right, let's pray. God, you're good, and in your kindness, you've allowed us another little glimpse of what it's like to be fruitful seeds. We ask that each of us this week would bear fruit for your kingdom. Help us to build relationships. Help us to invest in the relationship with you, that your word would become more and more a part of us, and that the fruit of the Spirit would just start to ooze out of us because of your work in our hearts and minds. We thank you for the privilege of being here today. And Lord, when persecution and troubles come, may we know that it's okay, that you are with us and that you will never leave us nor forsake us. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Go in peace, serve the Lord.
Say a couple words.
You go for it.
I have 5 more weeks.
You're going to speak to